Welcome to The Secret Life of Mothers. My name is Maggie Gordon-Walker and I'm the founder of Mothers Uncovered. Join us as we explore and share the incredible hidden stories of mothers when life has thrown at them challenge. Discover how the skills we learn in matrescence, which means becoming a mother, can teach us about more than motherhood. They teach us about unconditional love, resilience and acceptance. I'm joined today by Audra Phelps. Audra founded Mama Audra after leaving the LDS Church to discover her own identity as a woman and mother. With over 15 years of experience in international education and coaching, she discovered her passion in supporting mums grappling with grief, mum guilt, and identity loss after a faith crisis. When she finally made the decision to leave the church, she found herself sinking in uncertainty, lonelier than she'd ever been before, and constantly feeling like she was failing her children. Through years of coaching, she has walked the path to building relationships with her children based on love and trust, and navigating the loneliness that comes from starting all over again. She is now focusing her work on the unique challenges that ex-Mormon mums are navigating, helping them feel confident in who they are and blaze their own path on their own terms. Welcome to The Secret Life of Mothers, Audra.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's lovely to have you on. As you noticed, I changed moms to mums, seeing as I'm
Yeah,
English.
yeah.
But to your
Well done.
American listeners, they'll be retranslating them back. It's great to have you here. So let's start by asking, where in the world are you based, and is this the same area as you grew up in? Now, I know that's a slightly complicated answer, isn't it? Because you're on the move constantly.
It is a complicated answer, but we'll start with where I am at this moment. So I'm in Southeast Asia in a very small country called Timor-Leste. This is not the place that I'm from. This is not where I'm based, where my origin story begins. I work here. I'm currently transitioning careers, but I'm the director of an international school here. Um, and then I will be relocating at the end of the school year to the United States, specifically Washington State. But I have lived all over the US and then I've been overseas for the last 13 years. I've lived in Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, Kosovo, and now Timor-Leste. So,
Oh,
yeah,
a lot of different places.
a lot of
Um,
different
a
places.
lot of, and
Yes.
obviously your roots further back are from Ireland, but we'll come to that.
Oh,
Um,
Cornwall, actually. Yeah.
Cornwall, sorry, no, I don't know why I said
Cornwall. That's
Ireland.
okay.
Was there an Irish person featured in the? No, I've just made that up.
No.
Cornish. Okay.
Yeah, Cornwall. My mom's Cornish. So I
Okay.
understand mom versus mom. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a funny old thing. Who knows who's right? Who knows which came first? Both probably came at the same time. So, what would we need to know about you to understand how you would describe yourself as a mother?
I think simply put is that I believe in change. I believe that you can change as a mom, you can change as a person, you can reinvent yourself at any time. And the mother that I am now, I now have adult children, is much different than the mother I was when I was very young and had small children.
Mm.
And I think that for me, I felt like I was growing up alongside my children. And so I believe that you can always change and be better and learn new things and try different approaches as a mother.
It's true. It is. It's a constant, lifelong process. Matrescence,
Yes.
i.e., the
Yes.
becoming a mum. It's not just that first year, and I think the longer you are a mother for, the more you realise it's going to continually change the rest of your life.
Yeah. Yeah. And I look
Um,
back on some of those younger years, and at first I used to have some regret and some guilt because I would have done things so much differently.
mm,
But I've also learned to give myself grace because I was doing the best I could with the resources I had. And
sure.
I would give grace to any other mom that I'm coaching or a friend that comes to me. I would give them grace. So I need to give myself grace too.
It's very true. I think particularly with a first or an only child, because you are learning on the job, unless you've had the chance to look after a newborn baby. And even if you did, it's not your own baby, so it feels
Right.
different. You always look back and think, oh, particularly if you have a subsequent children, oh my, oh, I made such a fuss then. It was so easy, but you're not taking into account all you have learnt along the way.
Exactly. Yes,
And yeah,
exactly.
we're
Yeah.
very quick to beat ourselves up, I think, as mothers, and we should give ourselves more compassion.
Yes.
Um, so yes, your story. So in the intro, I mentioned LDS. Can you just explain what that means for those who are not familiar?
Yeah, so LDS stands for Latter-day Saint. The full name of the church is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The nickname, which people who are still in the church now are trying to actually get away from, is
Mm,
Mormon. So
yes.
all of those terms, and you'll hear me use them interchangeably, they
Okay.
all mean the same religion.
The
Mormon,
same thing.
LDS, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, all the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, well, yeah, but because people don't have a great understanding there, they have this sort of perception of, a repressive regime, which may or may not be entirely true. And they kind of lump it together. Oh, yeah, the Mormons, oh, they're the same as the Jehovah's Witness or the Amish. They kind of put it all together as one kind of block, I think.
Well,
And any other
a lot of,
cults they can think of.
yeah, exactly. A lot of parallels, a lot of similarities. So I could see how it's easy to kind of lump them all together. And as I talk with a lot more people who have been part of a high demand religion
Mm,
like Jehovah's Witness or LDS or Amish, a lot of us who have come out of it have those same sort of conditioned beliefs that we're dealing with. We're dealing with the identity crisis. We're dealing with a lot of the same things. So I could see it's very easy to lump them all together.
yeah, yeah, and well, I'm in. I would imagine in these religions, it's the women within them who experience the most restrictions on their life, would you say? Or do
Yeah.
you think it's fairly
Oh
even?
no, absolutely. No, it's not even at all. I think
Mm,
and my husband was also raised in the church. He has also left the church as well. And our experiences were a lot different. I mean, certainly he had some conditioning and things like that, but men have a lot more choice. They are,
mhm,
they're allowed to choose their career. They're outside of the home most of the time, working and pursuing career goals. Um, Men are also, it's very much a patriarchal society. So you know, it's white men on the stand at church, all the church leaders that these men can identify with because it's like looking at a mirror, reflecting back at them. But women,
mhm,
our experience is a lot different. So for women in the church, from the time you're small, you learn that you have a very prescribed role, that the plan for your life is already set out for you. And that plan for women is to prepare to get married, and you get married
mhm,
in the temple, so to another Mormon who can also go to the temple, and then you start having children. And so it's all about big families. So the Mormon church is very family oriented, big families, lots of kids, raising kids. The mother is the
mm,
nurturer in the home. And so women don't have nearly as much choice, if
mhm.
any, as men do.
Yeah.
So men have an opportunity to sort of discover who they are outside of the church and who they want to be and explore some of their interests and passions in a career. And women are home raising their children.
Mm,
So it's a very
yeah.
different experience for women versus men.
Mm. Yes. Yes. Well, I can see why you found it oppressive. Wanted to
Yeah.
help. So let's go back a little bit to your
Okay.
Cornish mother and yeah,
Yeah.
the history of your family. Can you describe the family background?
Yeah. So my mom is Cornish. She's born and raised in Falmouth, and she actually joined the LDS church when she was 16 years old. the missionaries came knocking on her door, and the story is that my grandmother felt sorry for them because it was raining, so she let them in.
Wow. So
And a few months,
the weather was sent to sign them up.
yes.
My goodness.
And
There must have been something she felt was missing though, to have, with both your grandmother and
definitely,
your mother, to have, you know,
definitely,
accepted it wholesale.
it was definitely a broken home, and I think they were
Hmm.
both really looking for belonging somewhere. And the church
Hmm.
provided that belonging. It provided a community, it provided a social structure. And so my grandmother and my mom converted to Mormonism in Falmouth and went to a very small Mormon church in Falmouth. And um, then my father, who's American and from Utah, which is the epicenter of Mormonism, he was actually serving a mission in Falmouth. And so he met my mom at church and they fell in love. And then, so as soon as his mission was over, she immigrated to the United
Hmm.
States and was,
And how old was she then?
she was, how old was she? 21, I believe,
Hmm.
when she
Okay.
immigrated to the US and just really assimilated right into the monoculture of the
Mm.
Mormon faith. And she was in Utah where everybody was Mormon. And she just, you know, immediately started fulfilling that role of a good Mormon wife and mother. And they started having kids right away. So they had 5 children. And
Did your grandfather stay in Cornwall? Had their relationship broken down?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my grandmother and grandfather stayed in Cornwall.
Okay.
Um, my grandfather never converted to Mormonism. It was not a stable marriage to begin with.
Hmm.
Um, so yes, my grandmother stayed a faithful member
Okay.
of the church until she passed away at 92 a few years ago. But my grandfather was never a religious person at all.
Mhm.
Yeah, so
Wow.
so my family started out in Utah. I was born there, but then at the age of 4, my father worked for the church. He ran what's called their Seminary and Institute program. So this was like religion classes for high school and college students, and he ran those programs. And so he was relocated to Southern California. So I grew up in Southern California, so outside of the Utah bubble, but still very much in a Mormon culture because the LDS faith is very insular. Like,
Mm.
you stick with your own and you're very much, you are the elite, you are God's chosen,
Mm.
and they they dictate your entire life. It's not just your belief in God, a religious belief. It's who you are, what you eat, what you drink, what you believe, how to raise your kids, what's your purpose in life. So you're, and you also always have like a social activity to go to. There's church
Mm.
on Sunday, there's Monday night family home evening, there's Wednesday night youth group, there's firesides on Saturdays. There's always something to do. So it also keeps you very, very busy.
Yeah. And all these evening events, so they're all dry events, though, aren't they? There's no alcohol. Is
Oh
that
yeah, there's
correct?
no, yeah,
Yeah.
alcohol. Wow, yeah, that's a big sin. Drinking alcohol,
Yeah.
even drinking coffee. Drinking coffee is
Wow.
against what they
Do
what
they
they call
stick
the
to that in
word
their
of this.
homes? I bet they're sneaking bits of coffee, no? At least. I don't, just, what's
Well,
what's
if
wrong
you
with the
are,
coffee?
I mean, if you are, well, see, that's one of the things that I was like, this doesn't make any sense because people are drinking Coke all day long, but I can't have a cup
Yeah.
of, this doesn't make sense to me. And I was always told it's not really about, the caffeine or the health. It's more about obedience. How obedient can you be to God?
Oh, silly. Wow.
Yeah, I
And
mean
I guess
that
Coca-Cola's are like a, big American product, isn't it? Whereas coffee, that's come from somewhere else. I don't know. Is
I
is
don't know.
Utah where the LDS church started? Is that its kind of main hub, or
That's its main hub now. It's not where it
yeah?
started, but that's the main hub now. It's where the headquarters is. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the
Wow.
main hub now. So I grew up in a very strict Mormon household and I followed the prescribed life. You know, I was very conditioned that my plan was to get married in the temple and start having kids. And
And
even
where were
going to
you in the
university,
birth order? Were,
I was
were you
the youngest
you were
of
the
five.
youngest? Five.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, youngest of five. So I was the rebel.
Yeah, well, they often say that about the youngest is the rebel. So there you go. So yeah, there you were. You were had your idea. You know, because that's all you knew. So why on earth would you think
Yes,
outside it?
exactly.
And you were happy, I guess, again because you didn't know what there was. Or were you when you were growing up? You'd see, presumably, you'd see people who weren't part of the church and start to just have a little niggle.
Yeah, I started to have a little niggle, but I was always, anytime I had kind of a doubt or something didn't sit right with me, or there was a lesson in church I didn't agree with, and I was the one who would voice it and be like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Then I was told, well, your doubts are sinful. And if
Right.
you are
Okay.
feeling doubts, that's Satan working on you, and you just don't have enough faith. You need to pray more and you need to read your scriptures more because you need to make your will the Lord's will. So, what that taught me at a very young age was to distrust myself,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and that those
Very
feelings
scary
that,
being told that.
oh, yeah,
You know, the devil's
absolutely.
tempting you.
The devil's
What
tempting you.
were there ever any kind of punishments for people they thought were stepping too much out of line, or was that not their thing? As in, you know, I don't know, locking people up or something.
Well, I mean, definitely you could be disfellowshipped, you could be
Okay.
excommunicated depending on what happened. Um, you know, so it depended on sort of the infraction. But if you were
Mm,
doubting and like vocalizing it in church, they would definitely call you in and,
yeah.
you know, give you a whole bunch of scriptures to read to get you back on the right path, you
Mm,
know?
wow. My
Yeah.
goodness. So yeah, you were there and you went to BYU. You said that's the
I
church school. What does that
yeah,
stand
so the
for?
BYU Brigham Young University. So Brigham Young
Okay.
is one of the prophets in the LDS Church. He was the second prophet after the founder, Joseph Smith. So there's a university named after him, and it's in Utah, Brigham Young University.
And
So,
everyone who goes there a Mormon or
oh
not?
yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
I mean, maybe you'd have a random person who's not Mormon who's there on a football scholarship, but
Okay.
I don't know why you would go to that school if you weren't
No.
Mormon.
Unless you didn't know, I
So,
guess, and just picked it.
oh, you
But
would
yeah.
know. Everybody knows.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
you would know. Um, so yeah, so I went to BYU. I was following what I was supposed to do. You know, education wasn't discouraged for girls, but the purpose of the education was different than the purpose for men.
Mhm.
So I was encouraged to go to university, but with the purpose of get a degree so that if in the future something happens to your husband,
Okay.
then you have something to fall back on. But it was never with the purpose of actually having a career.
Okay. Fine.
So I went to BYU um and met my husband there. So, you know, when you're in that and it's what everybody's doing, you know, everybody's there, everybody's dating, everybody's getting married at a very young age. I was only 20 years old when I got married.
Mhm.
And then, you know, in our at our wedding ceremony in the temple, so we did go through the Mormon temple to get married. And at the end of the wedding ceremony, the officiator said, now go forth and multiply and replenish the earth.
Yeah. I mean that
And
is their that's why there's so many children. You know, they're really hoping to
yes,
infiltrate
yes,
everywhere.
they want
Yeah.
to build the kingdom of God. I mean, there's a lot about, I mean, missionary work is huge, but also you have a lot of children so that there can be more Mormons on the planet because they believe
Yeah.
that everybody should be Mormon. And so so I started having kids. I had my oldest, I was 22 years old when I had
Mhm.
her. And I didn't, even though, you know, I made the choice to get married. I was in love with my husband. I made the choice to have our first child. was it really a choice? Like, I don't know that I really knew I could have done something different, because if I would have done something different, I would have been going against God's plan for me. And then there would have been
Mm,
eternal consequences to make a different
yeah.
choice.
Yeah.
So it
So
was a
how was
manipulative choice.
yes, yeah. How was that birth of your daughter? Was it in hospital?
Yeah, yeah. So the church didn't dictate anything really about childbirth. That, there, I know there's some like cults or high demand religions that don't
Mm,
let you go to hospitals or
mhm.
seek medical care. The Mormon church doesn't have any rules like that. So
Okay.
that wasn't dictated to me, and I chose to have her in a hospital. There were people having, home births, but I chose to have her in the hospital. And I remembered that I didn't want anybody there but my husband. I still had a lot of shame about my body. The Mormon church is a lot about modesty, and women need to cover up, because if they're not covered up, they might cause a man to sin by having impure thoughts, by looking at your
Okay.
shoulders. So
Mhm.
I
Are you supposed to be a virgin when you're married? Is that part
Yes,
of the new?
yes.
Okay.
Oh, that's huge. Yes. So
Okay.
no sex before marriage, no sex before
Right.
marriage at all. So purity culture is very big in the Mormon church.
Hmm.
And so I saw it, the that purity culture coming out for me in the shame of
Mm,
childbirth, like this beautiful
yeah.
experience. Now looking back, like this was my body doing something miraculous,
Mm,
and I didn't want anybody there. I didn't even want my own mom there. And because I didn't want her to see my body, I was still ashamed to show that to anybody.
wow.
So, so it was just, I had my husband there, and it was a long labor. I did have pain relief. I did have an epidural. At first I thought, I'm going to try this natural. Maybe I can handle it. And then the nurse said to me, "Is this your first?" And I said, "Yes, this is my first." And she said, "I'm going to go ahead and order the epidural just in case you change your mind." I, I was actually very glad she did, because I didn't
Mm,
start contractions on my own. My water broke, but I didn't start natural contractions. So
okay.
they had to give me Pitocin. And
Mm.
once that kicked in,
Oh, it's full on. Yeah.
oh
Yeah.
my gosh, I felt like my hips were being ripped in half. And so I was like, yes, is that epidural ready? I want it.
Yeah.
Um, but I was in labor for over 14 hours for a long time. And I think I think the epidural probably slowed it down.
Hmm.
And then I just was exhausted, so my pushes weren't effective. And so the
Hmm.
doctor said I was starting to get a fever, and so the doctor said, I'm going to use the vacuum to kind of assist to get her out.
Yeah.
I didn't know any
Ventouse.
better.
Yeah. The ventouse
Yeah.
is what we call it in the UK. No, you
Yes,
don't call it that?
yes.
Okay. Yeah.
No, they just called it a vacuum, which is such a
Yeah, which
crude
is
name.
accurate. That's what it is. I think ventouse makes it sound like some nice,
Yeah.
nice little
Sounds like this.
fragrance.
Yeah,
Ventouse.
exactly. I think I would have preferred that name. But so then, a few minutes later, she was born, and there she
Wow.
was, and she had a big sore on her head from the vacuum, but she was
Yeah.
a healthy baby, and my
Wow.
motherhood journey began.
Yeah. So yeah, you talked, I mean, in the same way that your birth was affected by the church, your motherhood years, you said they were taken from me. So can you talk
Yeah,
us through the depression that started in your late 20s, by which time you'd had your other children, I guess, and led to your
yeah,
move away from the church?
yeah. You know, Having kids was what everybody was doing. And it was like just checking the box of my checklist of duties as a righteous woman. And since it's what everybody was doing around me, it was so common that I didn't really appreciate motherhood. I didn't appreciate the the small moments with my kids. I was also so young. I was very immature. And so it was just, I was so much in survival mode, you know, and so I had three kids. They're all 2 years apart. And when my youngest was about 4 years old, I was really struggling with anxiety to the point where I was having pretty severe panic attacks almost on a
Mm.
daily basis. And they were debilitating. So for me, panic attacks can look different for everybody, but for me, it was I would hyperventilate and I just couldn't get a breath. And they would often come out of nowhere. I couldn't really predict when they were going to happen. And I was also really depressed. So I knew something was wrong. I can look back and I can recognize that that was actually my body screaming at me that I was living in a life that was not mine. I was living a
Mm.
life that was not aligned with who I really was, but I didn't even know who I really was. And so I was doing everything that the church told me to do. I was reading my scriptures. I was a stay-at-home mom, even though I desperately wanted to work. I was told that's not your role. You're the nurturer. You need to be home with the kids. And I remember saying to a church leader, because my husband was an elementary school teacher and he was always great with kids. And I remember saying to this church leader, but my husband's so much better with the kids than I am. What what if we just switched roles and he stayed home and I went to work?
Mm.
And the church leader was like, I mean, you would have thought I would have asked to chop off my right arm. He was like,
Mm.
no, the man's place is in the workforce and your place is at home. So
Yeah.
I was very quickly put in my place of regarding where I belonged. Um, but I was doing everything that the church was telling me to do, and still I was just drowning in depression. And it's because I had really lost myself trying to fulfill someone else's expectation of me.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a big burden.
It
Yeah.
was a
Day in,
huge
day out.
burden. It
Yeah.
was a huge burden, and I didn't realize at the time what it was stemming from.
Yeah.
I tried antidepressants and those work for some people. They didn't work for me. The side effects actually for me made it worse.
Hmm.
With the particular antidepressant that I was on, it caused what was called brain shakes, which is
Hmm.
where I would just be driving in the car or sitting on the couch and it would literally all of a sudden it would feel like my brain was shaking in my head.
Wow.
It was very scary for me. So the side effects for me, it wasn't helping the depression. And then I was having side effects. So I thought I've got to try something else. And I wasn't really getting to the root cause of it, but I knew that exercise was really
Yeah.
really helpful for depression. So I found an exercise group, and this had nothing to do with the church. So this was kind of one of my slow erosions out of the church. I found this
Mm.
exercise group that would train for, different running races. And I didn't know anything about running, but I thought I need to exercise. And this is a community of people giving me accountability. So I'll do it.
Mm.
And I really found some great friends in that community. And it was one of the first times that I found a community of people that was not related to a religious belief. And I
Mm.
felt so comfortable with them. I didn't have to hide who I was. I didn't have to hide doubts or beliefs or feelings. I didn't have to pretend to be the perfect mom. I could just be honest and they were not judgmental at all. It was a real
Yeah.
sincere connection. And that was the first time in my life that I really felt like I had that.
And you can see there's something outside this. It's like the Truman Show
Yes.
when he finally gets to the edge, and it's like there's the word. Oh, there was something there, but I've been kept from it all this time, and I know something's not right,
Yes.
but I don't know what it is until I get there.
Exactly. Exactly. I had been so much in the Mormon bubble because the church is so insular that this really got me out of it. And I was like, wow, people outside of the church are actually really lovely. And oh my gosh, they're happier than the people I
Mm,
know that are in the church. So
right.
something
Yeah.
is not adding up.
Yeah. How are things with your husband then? So you were having doubts, and was he, or at what point did you kind of feel the need to say to him, "This isn't right for me"?
That, we always had a very open communication in our relationship. We always had a real like mutual respect. And one of the things I love about him the most is that he's always listened with the intention to understand. He's never
Right.
listened with the intention to convince me of something else or to be thinking
Mhm.
of his response. He's always just listened to understand. And so I every time I had a doubt or I had, was struggling with anxiety or when I was having panic attacks, I would go to him. And so he knew and he had a lot of the same doubts that I had as well. And a few years later after this, anxiety and depression phase of my life, a few years later when I finally left the church and I told him, he said, "I can see that this is what you need to do, but I'm not there yet." And
Yeah.
so he wasn't quite ready to leave. And I said, "That's fine. You make the decision that's best for you. I don't want to influence you in any way." And so he stayed in, but just for about a year. And then he left about a year later.
Mm. Wow. Must
Yeah.
have been, yeah. I'm trying to imagine that time. That must have been quite overwhelming, all of those things that were going on.
It was
Yeah.
really overwhelming. And, one of the things that I did during this time when I was really struggling with depression and um, I went back to school. So even though I had gone to BYU, I didn't graduate from BYU. I actually got kicked out, which is a whole other story.
Really? Now, just tell me briefly, why did you get kicked out? What were you doing?
The most ridiculous. I mean, anyone who didn't grow up Mormon would be like, "What? They kicked you out for that?" So the first infraction was that I had a boy in my bedroom with the door open, I might add, heaven forbid. The second infraction, which was the final straw, was that I mooned a group of people in a hot tub. And so,
Well
and
done, Audra.
so there we go.
And
Out
that
of
wasn't under the influence
university.
of alcohol, I'm assuming.
No,
No,
totally
you were just,
sober.
it was just high spirits. Imagine what you'd have done if you had been drinking. Anyway, back to the story, but I didn't want that to go by because
Anyway,
people would think, well, I want to
anyway.
know what she did.
Yeah, so I went back to school. We were living in Idaho at the time, and so I went back to school. So I had the courage to know that something needed to change. I knew that I was living a life that was completely dependent on someone else. I was dependent on my husband for money, and I was dependent on the church to tell me everything else.
Mhm.
And I knew that I needed some sense of independence. I needed something for myself. So I went back to school. And I liked science. So I chose to be a biology teacher. Now, why teacher? Not really because it's what I wanted to do, but because that was the most benign job a Mormon mom could have because it would keep
Okay.
me at home with my kids. I
Yeah.
would have the same schedule as my kids. I would never have
Uh-huh.
to put them in daycare. We'd have the same holidays, and nobody in the church would look at me sideways for working as a teacher.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I went into a career to be a teacher, and the what that did is that actually opened up the world for us because my husband was also a teacher and he was an elementary school teacher, and now I was a high school biology teacher. And we were introduced to the world of international education. And so we knew we wanted our kids to have a global perspective. We wanted to
Mhm.
make their world as big as possible. We wanted them to be exposed to different cultures and religions and just have a diverse range of experiences. And so we were like, this is perfect because we can travel and someone else is paying the bill, essentially.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so we moved internationally. The first country we moved to was Kazakhstan. And what that did for me was two things. I'd already been struggling with a lot of things with the church. I had already gone through, some really tough anxiety and depression. And I was already one foot out the door. Like I wasn't going to
Mm,
church that often.
yeah.
Um,
You were
but
how
when we
old
moved,
then? About 30, 30-ish,
I, wa-
31, something like
I
that?
was, when we went overseas, I was 33.
33. Okay.
Yeah, 33. So moving overseas did two things for me. One, it gave me that physical separation from the church.
Mm,
I was so much in the minutia of it all day, all
mm.
the details. If I didn't go to church on Sunday, a church leader would show up at my doorstep and be like, "Hey, we missed you. Where have you been?" Always framing it with love, but really it was like, wow, you're really
Yeah. It's very
watching me.
controlling.
Yes,
Mm,
so controlling. And I was so that it gave me that physical separation. So I could start to really kind of unravel everything that was happening in my mind while I was immersed in the church. And I could
mm,
start to zoom out and see it objectively. So that space gave me a bird's eye view. Then
yeah.
the other thing that moving overseas gave me was exposure to so many other religions. I was, and at first it was very confusing to me because, like, I would go to a Hindu temple and see these really convicted, uh, congregation members or followers, and they were happy and they were so dedicated. And then I would go to like a Catholic cathedral and it would feel very spiritual and sacred. And same thing at a Muslim mosque or at a Zoroastrian temple. And it was like,
Mm.
but I was told that Mormons were the only ones that really
Only
had
one.
sacred
Yeah.
places, right?
Hmm.
And that we had the monopoly on happiness, but these people are actually really happy. And I started to see the dedication of people following other faiths. And so it started to
Hmm.
open my eyes to other beliefs. And so once I was able to zoom out and then have these life experiences, then I could start to recognize things pretty quickly within the church that didn't resonate with me. And so, what the final straw was for me, it was about 2 years after we had moved overseas. The church came out with a statement that I had a real visceral reaction to, that I knew I didn't agree with it. And it was that the children of gay parents would be
Hmm.
considered apostates and couldn't receive the blessings of the church.
Right.
And they framed it as love and protecting the children. And I immediately saw it for what it was. I
Mm.
immediately saw it as hate
Yeah.
and discrimination. And I had a real visceral reaction to it. I felt like I wanted to throw up. And I remember walking upstairs right after I read this. And I went into my bedroom and I was still wearing the Mormon garments, which is like the special underwear that you get as an adult when you go through the temple.
Really?
Yes. So there's a special underwear you get when you,
Wow.
right before you get married or before you go on a mission, when you go to the Mormon temple, you get this special underwear that you have to wear day and night all the time to remind you of who you are.
Wow.
Yeah, and
How are
it's
they checking
also,
you're wearing it? I mean,
well, they ask you.
okay.
They
And
ask
people are
you.
so scared to say, yeah, they're just going to be wearing
Yeah.
it in case they
Well, and
checked.
like I mean, it's also really judgy. Like the members like keep tabs on each other, like if I saw
Mm,
when I was Mormon, if I saw another woman like at the grocery store that I would go to church with and she was wearing a tank top, it'd be like, oh my gosh, she's not wearing her garments.
okay. Mm,
Hmm,
someone's going to
what's
get
going
some
on there?
judgment on them.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Wow.
So I went upstairs after I read that policy. I took off my garments and I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, I am not Mormon.
Yeah.
And that sentence took me a long time to be able to say because I am, it's like that's identity. That's the deepest part
Sure.
of your subconscious, right? And so I knew I was questioning. I was already 1 foot out the door, but that really gave me the courage to say, I'm done. This is not who I am anymore. And in that moment, I felt like the whole world just opened up into a million stars.
Mm.
I felt light and airy, and I felt empowered. And then shortly thereafter, I was petrified.
Yes, because you didn't know anything else. So if you,
I
as you
didn't
say,
know
you say, I'm
anything
not
else.
this. So what am I?
So
You're
what
like a
am I?
newborn baby all over again, but without
Exactly.
a supportive family to look after you.
Exactly. And when I made this decision, I was still raising kids. My kids were ages 9, 11, and 13, and I had started instilling this identity in them,
Yeah.
and the church gave me a blueprint for how to raise them, what beliefs to give them, what values to instill in them, what age they should start dating. Like the blueprint is very detailed of how to raise kids. So if I don't
Yeah.
believe in the church anymore, then that means I don't have to raise my kids this way. But then how am I
Yeah.
going to do it? Because it hasn't been modeled to me. I was raised in the church. That's all I knew.
Mm. So you made the decision, and your husband,
Yeah.
you say, was about a year later. But say let's get to the
Yeah.
point when he's also left.
Yeah.
So how
Sure, sure.
did your family, particularly your mother, respond to this kind of cuckoo in the nest? I believe is the expression.
I was definitely a excuse me. I was definitely a cuckoo in the nest. Yes.
Mm.
My mother was silent, actually.
Right.
Um, my mother, yeah, my mother was very silent. She
Mhm.
was never one to broach the subject. And
Yeah.
at the time, I was living in a different country, so it was easy for her to just not reach out. Um, my parents actually found out through my cousin who told them, like it was through the family gossip ring. So
Okay.
I
Yeah.
didn't get the opportunity to be the one to tell them. And um who I did hear from my father, and it was a lot of anger and a lot of who's deceived you? What is it you believe? Tell me exactly so that I can convince you why you're wrong.
Right. Wow.
And so that was pretty shocking. I remember trying to respond at first, but then realizing it wasn't a battle I was going to win. It would always be trying to because if you think about it, like they're so convicted, and now I can kind of look at their perspective. they
Mhm.
they really think that I've eternally damned myself and my children,
Mm.
and so it's
Yeah.
painful for them.
Yeah.
It's painful
Yeah.
for them to see that I have chosen a different path and that I don't believe in the things that they raised me in.
Mm.
And
Has it
that
got
still continues.
easier over the years? I mean, this is what, about 8, 9 years ago when you first made the decision. Do you have much? You said you mentioned you'd been to a wedding of a family member.
Yeah, my daughter actually went to a wedding
Mm.
of a family
Your
member
daughter. Okay.
recently. My daughter went to because we're not in the US, so we often miss out on those events. But my
Yeah.
daughter went, and I we kind of chuckled before she went. I said, "Keep track of how many people try and convert you."
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
so we
you're,
have a relationship, but it's
yeah,
definitely a tender relationship. There's
sure.
boundaries. I put
Mhm.
up the boundary pretty early on that I won't talk about it
Yeah.
with them. It's not that I don't want to. I would love to have an open conversation and feel like they really wanted to know where I was coming from, and they really just wanted
Yeah.
to know me better. But
But yeah, if it's going to segue very quickly into you're wrong because the
yes,
devil said this, so therefore it's
yes.
just like, yeah, they're not listening. They're not like
Yes,
your lovely husband who would listen to understand. They're
exactly.
listening to go, right, I'm hearing that, but no, but you're wrong because.
Exactly. And I know it would go that way because I have tried a few times and it always
Mhm.
goes straight that direction. And so
Yeah.
my relationship with my parents is very superficial. I still want them in my life, but it's definitely there's certain topics we don't that we keep off limits
Mhm.
and we touch base here and there. Um I'm hopeful that moving forward, maybe we can have more of a deeper connection. I have
Mhm.
seen some changes in them over the years. I was the first one in my family to leave, but others have left too now.
Ah, interesting. Okay.
And
So at
so
least you've
I
got
have,
them as allies.
yes, I do. I have a brother who's an ally for me, and my children and his children are all out of the church as well. And through that, even though I was the first one to leave, I have seen my parents soften. I have seen some of their behaviors change.
Mhm.
So I'm hopeful that, it could
Mm.
continue to go deeper, but maybe it will never be what it was.
No. And with your children, I think you said your daughter had a bit of resistance to leaving because she was the
Yeah.
eldest at the time.
Yes. So my oldest daughter, she was 13 at the time. And so, when my husband said when I left, he said, "Well, I'm going to still go to church and I'll take the kids if they want to go." And so gave the kids choice. Do you want to stay home with mom or do you want to go to church with dad? And the two youngest were like, "We don't want to go to church. We're staying home."
Yeah.
But our oldest was for a few months was like, no,
Yeah.
I want to go. I still want to go. But she had more years in it,
Yes.
and
And a bit
and
like you,
then
she didn't know what the alternative was. It was
yeah,
unsettling, particularly when you're
exactly.
entering teenage years and everything's very turbulent
Yeah.
anyway.
It was a known, it was predictable, it was a
Yeah.
habit. And so she chose to go. She only really went for a couple months
Hmm.
and then she stopped asking to go, and then my husband stopped going too. And then about a
Yeah.
year later, he also said, "I'm done." Yeah.
So obviously, yeah, you've had this big trauma throughout your life, really kind of impacting how you were, which led to your
Yeah.
uh, depression. So then you made the decision that you wanted to help other mothers, specifically mothers, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, with
Yeah.
with transition. Can you just talk a bit about that?
Yeah. When I left the church, I didn't know anyone else who had left. Like I mentioned, I was the first one in my family who had left. I didn't have any friends who had left. I was really lonely and I really
Mm.
struggled with the loss of family because of, the way my family reacted. And then there was silence for a long time. There was a lot of grief and not just grief for a loss of community, but grief for a loss of self. And then there was also a lot of mom guilt. Like, okay, am I screwing up my kids? Like I'm going to be doing this basically on my own and making decisions without an external authority telling me how to do it. So am I just going to totally screw them up? And there were so many emotions and so many things happening that I couldn't make sense of it. And
Yeah.
now 11 years out, I've done so much work on how I want to raise my kids, what kind of a relationship I want to have with my kids, what feelings I don't want them to ever have to feel that I grew up feeling.
Mm.
And also, I've done a lot of identity work. Like, okay, if I'm not Mormon, then what am I? What do I want to be? What emotions
Mhm.
do I want to live in most of the time? I went down the road of, am I in the right career? Which has shifted me into what I'm doing now. I also went down the road of, I'm in a marriage, somebody I chose to marry when I was 20-year-old Mormon girl. And do I still choose this person today? So
Mm.
I had to really deconstruct my entire life and then slowly start keeping the pieces that I knew were mine, that I knew I wanted,
Mhm.
that aligned with me, that I wanted to keep, and then finding new ones as well. And so I had a coach several years ago who was helping me dive into a lot of this, the identity piece, and her main focus was related to marriage. So I was making the decision of to stay or go in my marriage, and I was learning a lot about identity and emotional regulation because I wanted to make that decision from a place of peace, not from a
Mhm.
place of frustration or resentment, and I couldn't get out of that emotional space. So I was working with this coach, and I'd made the decision to stay in my marriage. I'm still am, was and is 100% confident I still choose this person today. And then I was starting to talk to her about, you know what, I'm also in a career I that doesn't align with me. But the things that I love about my job, so taking those pieces of what it was that I liked that I want to keep in my life and integrate into my future life. What I love about my job was I loved working with students. I loved it when they would come into my classroom and kind of download all of their problems. When I moved into school administration, I really loved working with parents when they would come in and ask, about their child struggles, or
Mm.
parenting tips, or how do I deal with this situation. I really loved coaching parents too. And so I said, I think I want to do some kind of coaching like that. And she said, well, what kind of demographic do you want to work with? I have no idea. And she knew my history, and she said, have you ever thought of working with other moms who have left the LDS church? And as soon as she said that, I burst into tears, and I was like, that is it. That is it. Because when I left,
Mm.
I was so alone, and I didn't know anybody else who had left. And I was trying to explain it to people who didn't know anything about Mormonism. And then I found myself exhausted trying to explain the Mormon church at the same time while trying to explain my emotions. And it was exhausting. And so so that's it. So I knew that that was the path for me. So that's what turned me on to, this is what I'm going to start doing. And um so now I've slowly started working with women as they've left, and they're learning to tune into themselves. They're learning to observe without engagement. They're learning to regulate emotions, learning to have boundaries with their family, because people pleasing is a huge thing. And
Mm.
not just with Mormon women, but I think just women in general, that people
Oh, for
pleasing
sure.
is
Yeah.
huge, right?
Which ramps up
And
when you become a mother, I think, that people pleasing,
yes,
because the amount of women that we see who, their needs are absolute the bottom of everything, and they're
bottom.
broken by it all, but they still see that, oh no, as long as baby's all right, I'm all right. So it's like, no, you need something for you to
Yeah. So
rebuild who
we
you
kind of,
are.
exactly, we kind of start poking holes in those beliefs. Like,
Mm.
usually there's a belief there that a good mom sacrifices for her kids.
Yeah.
You have this definition of what a good mom is, and that definition was given to you, but you're living according to someone else's expectation of what a
Mm.
good mom is. So we start to kind of poke holes in some of those definitions, those beliefs that you have of what a good mom is, because,
Mm.
you know, the truth is you're not responsible for other people's happiness. You can't control other people's emotions.
Yeah.
But women and moms especially feel like they are responsible to make sure everyone in the household is happy, even if they're just exhausted
Mm.
with nothing left at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And, also they also really want these deep connections with their kids, and this real understanding of each other, and a love that's really based on being genuine and not
Mm.
judgment. So you have to really unplug from that church programming of of the expectations that you might be projecting on your own kids that you don't even realize you're projecting onto your own kids.
Mm.
And just getting to know them for who they are. And, like I said at the beginning, like being flexible with changing as a mom, and changing your mind and changing your ideas and your ways of doing things as you learn more about your child, as you learn more about yourself, and you learn new ways to do things.
Yeah, it sounds incredible, Audra. I'm sure you've helped many, many mothers with their transition. So, talking of transition, matrescence being the transition to motherhood, In the UK, we have Desert Island Discs. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's a radio show where people name their tracks that they would take to a desert island. So I like to think of a matrescence disc, a song that you associate with motherhood in general or with yourself as a mother. What have you chosen and why?
When you asked me this, I thought, oh gosh, a song related to motherhood. And the very first song that came to my head was Sheryl Crow, If It Makes You Happy. And as I thought, I was like, really, that's the song that came to my head? Okay, there must be something there. So as I was thinking about it, I thought, you know what? This song really does relate to the complexity of motherhood, because the way I interpret it is Sheryl Crow is singing, she just wants to be herself. She just wants to do all of these fun things, but she's stuck in a life where she's, making toast and serving French toast to her kids in bed and serving other people. But really, there's this other part of her that just wants to be herself and break free. And I think every mother feels that way,
Mm.
and but then also you get these messages from society. She sings, if it makes you happy, then why the hell are you so sad? You get these messages from society like
Yeah,
motherhood is the happiest time, and there's a lot of great things about motherhood, but there's a lot of difficulties too. And there's a
yeah.
lot of sorrow with motherhood as well. And so you're happy and sad at the same time. So to me, that song just represents the complexity of motherhood and trying to balance yourself and your happiness with your kids as well.
That sounds perfect. Audra, how can listeners or watchers find you if they want your expert coaching?
Yeah. So I have a website. It's Mama Audra. And I also have a free master class on there, the 5 shifts that every former Mormon mom needs to make. So you can just click on the link on my website to watch the master class. And then if that resonates with you, you can schedule a call to chat with me. I have a program called Reclaimed. It's about reclaiming your identity, reclaiming who you are, taking back authority over your own life, making that parenting blueprint yourself. And it's an 8-week coaching program. We have group coaching, we have individual coaching, and a curriculum to work through. And so you can schedule a call with me, and we can see if you're a good fit.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Audra, for sharing your story. It's been really great talking to you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been a
Yeah.
pleasure.